Okay, hello everybody and welcome to our webinar on planning and implementing mid-course evaluations. My name is Eva Dobner and I am a teaching and learning consultant with Teaching and Learning Services, and I'm here with my colleague, Senior Academic Associate Carolyn Samuel.
Hi everybody.
As you should have already heard, the webinar is being recorded and you will be able to access the recording or download a PDF of the slide presentation from our webinar website.
I'll just put that link in the chat for everybody right now.
Yes, and you will see the link also at the bottom of our slides, actually throughout, I think. Feel free to turn off your camera if you're more comfortable that way. Of course, we like seeing your faces if you feel that's fine. You can also use the chat throughout the presentation, but please note that we won't be answering any questions until the end of the webinar. So if you have a question that's specifically for us, please hold on to it until the end. Okay, this brings us right to the outcomes for today's session. We have 3 things we would like you to be able to by the end of the session. One is you should be able to explain to your students why mid-course evaluations are beneficial. Why is this important, you ask? Well, you want them to put in the time and give you valuable feedback. And for that, they should feel motivated. You need buy-in. And we hope that you will get that if you know how to motivate them. Then the second one is we would like you to be able to select a suitable mid-course evaluation strategy for your context. There is no such thing as one size fits all. And so Carolyn will later on share different methods with you that you can choose and pick from what works best for you. And finally, last but not least, you should be able to determine appropriate feedback responses. So this is very important because that can really make or break the success of your student, of your mid-course evaluation. Now, before we continue, we would like to hear from you. Why do mid-course evaluations? What are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the chat.
So we'll give you a little time to think and then start typing in the chat. What reasons might you have for doing mid-course evaluations?
Yes, make sure everything is okay. Make adjustments. Does everybody agree with that? Or, yeah, intended objectives from the students' perspectives. Make sure students are not lost.
Okay, one came in to me privately, but I'll keep it anonymous for this semester and for the second one to come. So for planning for the future, yeah.
Yeah, get feedback, how it's going. Since the approach is new to me, I would like to know how to make it more fun for the students and ensure less pressure. Yeah, that's very nice. Yes. Yes, it's harder to get a sense in this context of what's working in the course. So this is definitely a good year to do mid-course evaluations. Okay, so I think the main reason that has come through is really to kind of check the pulse of your class partway through, see where you're connecting well with your students, see where there's a disconnect between your intentions and the student experience. And so on the one hand, that can spare you some negative surprises at the end of the term. At the same time, you can gain some practical and actionable insights that help you make changes to your course while it's still running and while your current students can still benefit from it. So that's one reason, or 2 reasons actually already, for doing mid-course evaluations. What's really important and what I think is sometimes overlooked is that done correctly, mid-course evaluations communicate to your students that your course is learning-centered. And this is really important because this is one of the main things why we're teaching, is that we want students to learn. And sometimes that gets a little bit overlooked, that when you're doing mid-course evaluation, you're actually communicating with your students. You're saying, I'm intentional about my strategies. I'm intentional about the assessments. And I'm reflecting on what helps you learn. And at the same time, you're actually encouraging your students to do the same. You're encouraging them to reflect on what helps them learn and what's working for them, right? Another good reason to do mid-course evaluations is that it actually gives you a chance to model constructive ways of responding to feedback. Students receive feedback from you, either as comments or as a grade, and we never actually discuss how do you handle feedback? How do you cope with feedback? And mid-course evaluations are a great way, a great opportunity for you to model this to your students, to say, this is how I deal with positive feedback, this is how I deal with negative feedback in a constructive way. And finally, of course, if students see that you're really hearing them, that you're listening to them and value their feedback, they're also much more motivated and more likely to fill in the end of course evaluations. So when should you be doing mid-course evaluations? Well, obviously, it would be good if you wait long enough that the students have had a chance to receive some feedback from you. So the students should already have a chance to see, am I learning well or not? So at least a low stakes assessment should have taken place, something to give students an idea of how well they're doing in your course. At the same time, they should have had enough time also to settle into the course and get used to the way you're doing things. But it has to be early enough that you still have a chance to make changes to your course. So generally, we're recommending week 4 to 7 in a regular course. And now I'm handing it over to Carolyn, who will talk with you about the second outcome of today, namely the different methods of doing course evaluations.
Thank you, Eva. So indeed, we are going to look at different strategies for carrying out mid-course evaluations. So I'm going to talk about 5 different strategies. And the first one is using a survey. And a survey can be done either in my courses or with Microsoft Forms. We have access to Microsoft Office Forms through Office 365. If you're planning on doing a survey, we'd suggest it not be too long because this is a mid-course evaluation. We're not thinking in terms of a comprehensive course evaluation. So a short survey can be set up either in my courses or in Microsoft Office Forms. So that's the first one. And let's go to the second one. The second one could be a discussion in my course's discussions. And this would be a place where you can put a prompt or a question for students to address either as a whole class or in small groups. And students would be able to see each other's comments. So that's quite different from a survey where students are responding individually. But if you did this in a My Courses discussion forum, peers would be able to see each other's comments and they might feel inspired by them. And it's a way of brainstorming, getting ideas, and that might influence the type of feedback that you get. So that's another possibility. Let's go to the third one. The third one is polling. So you could use polling at McGill. It's an efficient way of getting information from students. You can pose, for example, one question during class. I wouldn't use polling necessarily if you had many questions that you were going to put to students, but if you had one key question on which you would like feedback, you could do it through polling and ask the students to do this during fixed sessions, so in a live class. Okay, so that would be polling. Let's take a look at the fourth option. And the fourth option would be to give students a 1-minute paper to write. And a 1-minute paper consists of providing students with a question or some prompt that they address in writing. You give them about 60 seconds, 1 minute, to respond to that question or to that prompt. And you can have them submit this through the assignments tool in My Courses. And in the assignments tool, students would have the option of typing directly into a text box or attaching an assignment, attaching a Word document and submitting that as an assignment. So whichever is easiest for them, and I guess for an instructor it might be easier if they just type directly in the text box because then you don't have to download the Word documents, but either way can work. But in 60 seconds you can get probably some valuable thoughts from students if they're writing longhand. They could be bullet point too, but the idea is that it's very open-ended. We can go to the fifth possibility here, a fifth strategy. And a fifth strategy would be to have student-led discussions. And in a student-led discussion, you would assign the questions or the prompts and then break students into small groups. You can do that in breakout rooms in Zoom. Have students address the questions. You would suggest that they designate one student to be a recorder or a reporter. That student would take notes and then submit those to the instructor afterward. And in fact, we have some guidelines for that. And I'm just going to copy the link right now and put that into the chat. So these are some guidelines if you wanted to use this strategy. And a variation on this particular strategy would be to have a neutral third party lead these or facilitate the small group discussions. So you could invite somebody, for example, from Teaching and Learning Services, an educational developer, to work with the students to come to your class and divide the students into the groups, but then the students would report back to that third-party facilitator who would then communicate the feedback to the instructor. But that third party is also a discussion facilitator, not just a conduit for the information, but can probe students on their responses and get additional information, and that is then transmitted to the instructor, but not just transmitted, it becomes a conversation between the facilitator and the instructor. So that's just a variation on that. So those are 5 different possibilities. We're not saying that they are the only ones, but these are some possibilities. Okay, so let's keep going and let's look at what you might want to consider when selecting a strategy. So we've given you some options. Okay, how do you decide? Well, one consideration might be sorry, I just got sidetracked with the note in the chat. So we'll.
There seems to be some problem with the link. I don't know why. I have the exact same link. It worked an hour ago.
Okay, well, we'll check that before the end. Okay, sorry about that. We'll get back to you. Okay, so coming back to the considerations, familiarity with the tools. So now that we're mid-course, it might not be the time to try out a new tool, something that you are not familiar with and something that your students are not familiar with. So that's a consideration when choosing the strategy. Another consideration is the influence of peer-to-peer sharing. So I mentioned that earlier, that if you do have students in groups, there can be some influence from one peer's comments to another's, but that might be a good thing. So you have to decide what kind of feedback you want to get and if this is a strategy that you care to employ. Another consideration might be class size. So I alluded to that before, but I'll just come back to it with surveys. Surveys might work very well in large classes, whereas minute papers might not work so well in a large class, because if you have 1,000 students, you might not be feasible to read 1,000 submissions, but a survey, of course, the data can be analyzed more readily in a large class. Then we have anonymity. So if you teach a really, really small class, and there are some very small classes at McGill, like 5 students or so, they might not feel so comfortable writing anything longhand or participating in a small group discussion if they're concerned that they will be identified or associated with their comments. So class size and anonymity sort of go together, and you might want to consider those in tandem. And then finally, we have response rate. And in the old days, prior to the pandemic, we probably would have said to you, if you want to have a high response rate, consider allowing 5 minutes at the end of class for students to do the mid-course evaluation, because you have your captive audience. We don't know to what extent that will hold in the current remote teaching environment. If you have many students attending a fixed session or a live session, that might hold, but we don't know who's going to be attending the sessions. So this might be a consideration, and you know, the whether or not to do this during class time is a consideration. And in fact, maybe you want to allow different types of opportunities for students to provide their mid-course feedback. So if you do something during class time, maybe pose a question in my courses through a survey as well, so that students who weren't in class can still provide you with feedback. But we do want to say that in all cases, it's important to manage expectations, very important to manage expectations. So when you pose the questions, we would encourage you to keep in mind that you want to be asking things that you are prepared to address. And it doesn't mean that you have to act on everything students say, but you do want to be asking questions that you can work with during the course and not just at the end in preparation for next semester. So we're thinking 3 to 4 questions might get you the feedback that you need, and then make sure those questions relate to topics that you are prepared to address. So more concretely, what to ask. We're going to show you examples of questions, but just before we do that, I do want to mention that somebody submitted a question in advance, and it was about growing students' workloads. So we have heard that across the university, students are commenting that their workloads are greater than they've been before, and perhaps too onerous at this point. So you might want to ask a question about that. We're not going to resolve that issue during this webinar, but you might want to ask a question that addresses that. And another comment that was made is that students are finding frequent assessments to be challenging. So if that's a concern, you would want to put a question on your survey or in your discussion for your students that addresses those points. So let's take a look at the first set of examples, and these are open-ended questions. So we'll just let you read for a minute. And we can see that the second question there, B, does speak to the idea of workload. And we're not saying this is the only way to formulate the question. We're only proposing an example, but you might want to reformulate the questions in different ways so that they're more appropriate for what you're trying to get at. And Ava, let's see the other examples. So we've got these here in case you are working with a large class and you don't want to have open-ended questions. You can do some with drop-down menus or with scales. So we haven't filled those in, but you can imagine what those might look like. So please keep in mind, these are suggestions. And you might have other examples that will work well in your class and that will target different topics in your class. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ava, who will talk to you about acting on feedback.
Yes, and as you can see from the slide, one of the main messages today is you don't need to act on everything. And that's very, very important. You don't want to act on every little suggestion you get from your students, because as we've said previously, your course is designed for learning, and not all the feedback that you get will make sense in the context of your course. So let's discuss this a little bit. So first of all, very importantly, you absolutely should take some time in the week following the mid-course evaluation to talk to your students about the results. So provide a brief summary of the responses you got, and particularly the main points raised by your students, and share that with your class. Let them know what came up mainly in those mid-course evaluations. And also seize this opportunity to actually highlight to your students what's working well in the course. So if you got a lot of positive feedback on a particular strategy, on a particular assessment, share it with your students. Say, these are the things that seem to be going really well. This seems to be stuff where you really learn well, that helps and supports your learning. At the same time, very importantly, let students know what will and what will not change as a result of their feedback, right? So You can tell them, for example, maybe they gave you feedback and said, well, this class project, this lab assignment, it's really not clear to us. We don't understand what you're supposed to be doing. We're very confused. We're very stressed out. And you can say, okay, I hear you. What I am going to do is maybe next week at the beginning of class, we'll take 15 minutes and I will tell you one more time what it is that I'm expecting, and you can come with your questions and we'll discuss this project. At the same time, one thing that often comes up is that students complain, there is not enough text on the PowerPoints. I want to use those PowerPoints to study for the final, but the way they're written right now, they don't work for that. And you can say, well, I'm not going to change that for pedagogical reasons. I don't want you to study for the final based on the PowerPoints. That's not what the questions are going to be. And then you can explain to them why you want them to spend more time on phrasing their own kinds of response questions and things like that. So basically, the mid-course evaluations are your chance, as I said before, to really show to your students that your course is learning-centered, that you have chosen your strategies in an intentional way, that you have good pedagogical reasons, and it's your chance to share those with the students and help them understand why you're doing things in the course, in this course, the way you're doing them. So what else did I want to say? Oh yeah, so the important thing, of course, is that students feel that their feedback is valued. And let me rephrase this. They shouldn't just feel that it's valued. It should be valued. You should absolutely value the time and the effort your students put into giving your feedback, and you should be taking it seriously. But what if you chose a format for your mid-course evaluations that makes you end up with a lot of student comments, and you're feeling overwhelmed by all of these comments, and you're saying, well, I want to hear my students, I want to value their feedback, but I'm really just feeling overwhelmed by all of these responses. Well, we're having a tool for you on our website. It's a comment analysis worksheet, and the idea behind this is that it really helps you organize the comments you receive in a way that helps you make sense out of them. So you take your comments, you divide them into positive student comments and negative student comments, and you categorize them. So one category could be the difficulty of the assessment, or the organization and structure of your course, things like that. And by putting your comments into categories like this, it becomes easier to see the actual weight of a comment. So maybe you had a negative comment that when you read it the first time really hurt you, and you thought, oh my God, I really need to make changes to this course. The student says, I don't know, the group project is awful. I need to change the group project. But then you realize I have 60 students and there's only one single student who negatively commented on that group project. Well, so that means that comment doesn't actually have that much weight and you may not need to change it. On the other hand, you might find that 20 students said something negative about organization and structure. Well, now that has a lot of weight, and you realize that maybe there are some things you should be changing about the structure of your course, or the organization of your PowerPoints, or whatever it is that came up in the comments. So this analysis worksheet is really meant to kind of help you deal with a load of comments, if that's what you're getting from your evaluations. And of course, we always encourage you to really get the most out of your evaluations. Talk to a trusted colleague, talk to your unit head, or come to us at Teaching and Learning Services. Come to Carolyn, come to me. We're happy to help you talk through your comments and help you deal with the feedback. So that's it pretty much from me. Now we would like to hear from you. What's your most important takeaway from today's session? Please use the chat, and if you have a question or if you want to talk to us, raise your hand.
Either raise your hand or you can type a question in the chat. I do want to mention that I've put a link into the chat that I hope works this time. Maybe somebody can confirm that the new link I've put in the chat works. Okay,
good.
I got a yes. Great, thank you so much. And we should mention just again for those who came late, The webinar is being recorded, and the recording and a PDF of the slides will be available on the TLS webinars page probably in a day or two. We have to wait for, well, the slides will be there later today probably, but the recording will take a couple of days maybe. And we will also be putting links to some resources and to some references on the TLS webinars page.
I just see we have a question in the chat. Do you suggest to have the survey before or after the midterm exam? Well, as I said, there should have been some sort of assessment. If the midterm exam is the very first assessment that your students are getting, then you kind of should wait until after the midterm exam. If you have a series of other assessments that the students already had, and if you would like to have some feedback before the midterm exam, then you do it before. So this is not, there's no straightforward answer to that. It also depends when you're having your midterm exam. Is it relatively late in the course or relatively early in the course? Carolyn, you want to weigh in on
that? Ditto, same thing. You're right on, Eva. I don't think I can really add to that. It depends, and you've given some good reasons on what this might depend.
I mean, do you want to have feedback on the midterm exam? Right, yeah. That could also be it. The other thing is what you could do after the midterm exam. A slight variation on the mid-course evaluation is to kind of see what worked for students. What kind of exercises or what kind of studying did the students do that were successful in the midterm? But that's a different kind of feedback survey to do. Could you also do the same kind of survey as you're doing now with Zoom?
Is that a question that was in the chat?
Yeah, it was sent to me privately, and I'm just trying to understand when you mean the same kind of. Do you mean as a polling? Because you can do some polling. Yes, you can do polling in Zoom, but it's very limited, as you can basically only ask multiple choice or yes, no kinds of questions, true, false. It's very limited. You can't get comments from it, at least not in an anonymous way. You can't get any nuance on it. So it might not be that helpful.
And the data aren't readily stored either.
Yeah.
So we've got one more minute. If anybody else has questions, we'd be happy to respond to your questions.
And again, we have a whole bunch of links to resources at the end of this presentation that you will see when you download the PDF of the slides.
Absolutely. Okay, well, it's 12:30. I don't see any other questions coming in, so maybe we'll wrap this up.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.